Welcome, everybody. I'm sure we'll have more trickling in, but I'm going to get the ball rolling here since we are on a tight schedule. I am Jean-Etienne LaVallee, a lead software engineer at Capital One, and today we're going to be talking about AWS Amplify and how you can use it to amp up your Flutter development experience. Quick introduction, I go by just Etienne, or some people know me as Red or that guy. There's my fingerprint online. Number of loves in my life, my family, of course, making and 3D printing and hardware hacking, my coworkers and my teams at work. I'm an avid outdoorsman, love hiking and flat water kayaking. I also love teaching technology and STEM to everything from, elementary middle schoolers to supporting FIRST robotics and FIRST technology. In general, my whole thing is that if you make learning fun, then it sticks and it works. And so I kind of got hung up, this elephant in our Zoom about a year and a half ago made a lot of those things more challenging. But at the same time, we found that we had a lot of time on our hands. And some of us revisited old hobbies like digging out that Guitar Hero or Rockstar set from your attic, and picking up new skills like trying out this Flutter thing for the first time. And start dabbling in this again, and you kind of feel like, I could be a rock star. I could be like these guys here. Yeah, man. Well, maybe not as cool as Prince, but you get the feeling. And then over on the Flutter learning curve side, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna stay up all night partying and coding. I'm gonna need extra keyboards. I'm just gonna dance at my sit-down workstation. I'm having so much fun. And you kind of get to that point where you're like, well, maybe I'm gonna take up guitar myself and try it out. And maybe I need to build a Flutter app and do the full life cycle here. So then you start feeling like these guys. Yeah, you kind of like realizing it's really air guitar, not real guitar when you're playing that game. And on the Flutter side, you're like, okay, I'm a noob. How do I build APIs? How do I do state management? What's this provider thing? And you're like this guy, crying and drinking at your sit-down workstation. So what we need to do is we need to amp our skills up. And like Marty here, we need to take it to 11, and we can do that with AWS Amplify. What is AWS Amplify? Well, it would be remiss to think of it as yet another web service in the AWS family. It's actually an infrastructure as a service framework that lets you organize various managed web services in the AWS family, so that you can have application interface services, cloud-based functions and Lambda modules, using Aurora and DynamoDB for your storage services, Cognito for auth services, and a number of other managed services, and a little bit of magic, which comes in the form of a really well-made SDK from multiple platforms that adheres to a consistent API, as well as an excellent command line toolkit that lets you orchestrate and manage these things very effortlessly without having to do a lot of the heavy lifting that you normally have to do if you're starting from scratch with AWS. Looking at the big picture of this in a fairly lightweight architecture model, the Amplify framework allows you, when you use it for your application, to build out storage services with Amazon S3, a multitude of application API services, API gateway for REST interfaces, AppSync for GraphQL, Cognito for your auth services for either using your own user pools or using federated user management, multitude of backend data services that you can wire into these application interfaces, as well as being able to provide analytics and messaging services through Pinpoint, SNS Push. And then underneath all of this is the fact that you're aggregating all of the logs and events from these services in CloudWatch, which lets you then do, log stream applications, Elasticsearch for being able to create reports and dashboards, telemetrics monitoring with AWS X-Ray so that you can track a critical path through your application and find performance bottlenecks. And then backing this all up is the fact that this is all built on a plugin model that is open source and managed by Amazon, but allows you to extend this framework. So if you have a custom topology that's not part of their base toolkit, but you deploy it over and over again, you could actually go and build an Amplify stack plugin for helping you manage that recurring pattern. For today, we are going to be honing in on this critical path, which is, let's normalize that a bit, which is going to be building an Amplify app that we will deploy a AppSync GraphQL API for, and that will be wired up to a DynamoDB NoSQL table to provide our data storage. But that's the front stage. What's really interesting is what goes on backstage. This is kind of the overall pattern of how a developer interacts with Amplify. You start with your development environment where you're managing your assets and building and deploying your front-end client app. And within that same application, you can manage the configuration and assets for your backend topology. And using Amplify CLI, that orchestrates all of that for you using CloudFormation without you ever having to write a CloudFormation template from scratch yourself. And we'll see that in the demo, how that works. What's great about this is that you then focus on what the capabilities are that you need for your application and wiring that into your application experience, and less of effort on managing your infrastructure and sharing that infrastructure with other developers. This can also be used in a CI fashion, so that the same Amplify CLI can be wired into scripts for your CI/CD flows and can be used for deploying and refreshing your development, staging, production, higher level environments. With that, we're going to do a live demo. Hopefully we won't have to burn any guitars to get there. Our set list today is going to be starting out with a fairly boring tutorial-esque to-do app, and then amping it up a bit, and we're going to wire in these pieces. So I'm going to hop over to my IDE here, and before I do that, let me actually let me hop out here. I will be sharing this. All of the code that I'm going to be showing today is out on GitHub, and I will drop this into the Slack later on once we're through this. So you'll be able to follow along. It's structured so that you can actually go through the steps and follow them, and then follow the README instructions. And it makes it really fun for being able to do the exercise we're doing today. So let's take a quick look. We have, like I said, a fairly plain, simple one entry point scaffolded Flutter app here. And this is currently running right now. I've got it running in an Arc emulator here. And right now it's pretty plain Jane. We're managing some of these little to-do items. These have a pretty basic model to them. Nothing special. It's all interactive. You can check things and you can add new stuff. New to do. And yeah, we can delete them too. All right, so all of our core functionality is here, but do a quick refresh here. There's no state management here. It's all just there. So we need to wire this to something and get working. In this app, I've added some hooks here so that we'll be able to do that fairly easily. So there's a little bit of redundancy in our callback tree here. But if we're going to amp this up, we need to first initialize Amplify. So to do that, we're going to use the Amplify CLI. This is a pretty easy setup. It's probably about a 30-second install to install Amplify. And you have to have, of course, an AWS account to be able to use this. But we're going to initialize this project right now. Actually, I may have wanted to do a step before this. Yep. And it's picked up our environment configuration. And so we're going to just tell it, yep, we're going to go with those defaults. And now I'm just going to have to do a little sleight of hand magic here because it's going to need AWS access keys so that we can do our provisioning. And we're going to deploy that in the US East region. Okay, while this is going, what's going on here now is that there is a new environment being set up here. And it is, where is this deploying? And there we go. We have now this new top-level Amplify project, which has, right now it's pretty skeletal, just basic structure for being able to build out additional features. And also what's been added here in the main Flutter project lib is a config file, which again, fairly skeletal, plain Jane. It's going to get populated as we work through this. You'll see in a moment. So these are our first two initial pieces that we need here. Now I'm going to go through, and what we want to do is we need to figure out a way of being able to get this data structure out in AWS land and on an API for us. So we will run through the Amplify add API command here. Oh, need an update. Okay, so we're going to build a GraphQL API for this demo. We'll just take the default name. And use API key for the API authentication. And demo API key. And yeah, sure. No, we're not going to do anything fancy today. So we're just going to take the default settings, and we are going to have it generate. Luckily enough, it has a template for to-do items, almost like I planned that. And this is going to create a to-do schema for us as it's generating the GraphQL artifacts. And I will say, no, I'll dig that out myself. So now, if we go back up here into the Amplify project and we check out our backend configuration, we can see that we have an API added to this configuration. And that in here, what's really the most useful piece in all of this is this GraphQL schema. This defines the model and the contract that we're going to have with the backend. And if you take a look here and compare that to our application model, well, we're missing one little thing here. So we don't have the completed field. So I'm just going to add that on. I'm going to redeploy this, and it will immediately update that in our backend. So to get this out into the cloud again, we need to run Amplify push, and this will build the CFT for us. It will compile the GraphQL fully realized resolver map in the schema, and it will push that out to AWS for us. So we're going to take that default, and we're going to let that run for a bit. So while that's running, I'm going to actually walk through what it's generating over here. If you see here, this is actually the CloudFormation execution going on in the background of all those pieces being pushed and deployed. And in here, we can see that it generated yet another schema file. Now, this is not a schema file you would want to mess with. This is the artifact that was created off of the development schema file that defines the entire structure needed to realize all of these query interfaces for your GraphQL for this particular entity. So being able to get the objects, list the objects, being able to do your CRUD operations. Amplify is automatically saying, well, you said this was a model and that this is part of your application model. I'm going to wire it up for you, and I'm gonna build the backend for you based on that. And when you change your model, or you make a more complex model, it reevaluates and regenerates these assets for you. Additionally, how you get this data, what's going on right now is it's building a DynamoDB backend for storing this data for you. To talk to that, it creates these resolvers. Oh, they're not there yet. Maybe they're in here. Yep, there they are. So these are Shiver velocity templates. They are part of the way that AppSync does data integration, and it basically just lets you describe in the template the query that you want to conduct against the data source that you're using. You can also use cloud functions and pipeline functions here. So if you have a complex orchestration, say you need to pull data from several different sources and aggregate it, or you've got like a caching interface that you want to query instead of another data source, you can substitute these velocity templates for cloud functions, and that can all be orchestrated on the command line. So you can see here, we have got ourselves a GraphQL endpoint deployed, and we can go take a look at that right now in the Amplify console. And this will pop open the AWS web console for our Amplify deployment that we've just created. There we go. And just put it in here. Oh, bear with me. Of course, now is when it decides to expire my my login. Apologies for the technical difficulty. So one thing I didn't test there, Shannon.
That's how it always works, right?
Right? Okay, I got it here. This is what I get for having multi-step authentication on my AWS account. Here we go. All right. There we go, folks. So this is our amped up demo application deployment. It's the default dev environment that it created for us. And if we look down here, we can see that we have a GraphQL API deployed, and we can go actually take a look at that right now. And it's an AppSync API. We can start out looking at the schema. So as I'd shown over in the IDE, the fully realized schema is now deployed in this instance. And we can see all of our query and mutation interfaces defined here. Additionally, as I mentioned, we now have a DynamoDB table for our to-dos deployed out here. And if we take a quick look, wait, I want to go to, they just changed this interface recently. There we go. If we go and scan and run, we've got no items in this database, nothing. But we can fix that. One of the other cool things about the AppSync console is that they actually give you a fully realized GraphQL client built right into the console. So if we want, we can go and actually create ourselves a new to-do here. So to do that, we are going to say we want to put in all these inputs, and we want to just see what comes back. Just grab it all. So we'll put in a description. Actually, I'll put in description since we're not going to use it. We're just going to use a name. So we'll do one, and we'll say our first to-do. And we can push that. Cool. And if we go over here and rerun this, we'll see we've got a new to-do item over here in the database. We'll do a couple more of those just to get it all, some test data populated. All right. And now let's go see. We can, of course, we can test just looking at the database and see them out there, but we can also go and do a different query. We can just say, hey, you know what? Let's just list all of our to-dos here. I want to see all the to-dos we have in the database right through GraphQL itself. So we do that. Yep. And there we have all of them. And likewise, we could get an individual one. We can, let's go and add a mutation to say change the status on one. So we're going to change number 2 to completed. Boom, and we'll grab all of our output that we want to see when it comes back. There we go, and checking over here, just make sure. Cool. We've been updated. So we have our vocabulary and our parlance for talking to GraphQL. It's all out there ready to go. We've got some test data. Let's get back into our jam session in the code here. And so I'm going to do a little sleight of hand since I knew we were going to be tight on time today and we've only got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to hop ahead to just getting our first, let's just say our list operation going. So we'll check out, for where to-dos. Of course, there we go. All right. So if we go back here and we take a look at our main application, we can see now in the update to-do list handler for loading to-dos, I've actually gone and put in that GraphQL query here. And we have in here, part of the state initializer is to initialize the Amplify Flutter SDK, which is just included up here, to include the API interface plugin. So that we can actually use the SDK to just take our config and run with it and be able to interact with our backend. Once that's initialized, that's globally available, and we can just issue a GraphQL query request directly against that. and it'll take care of all of the API, even auth signing, everything under the covers for us. And then the response handling here, I will admit, this is not production quality code, folks. This is just brute force, you know, serializing into our to-do object structure. I would recommend that if you're going to be using this and really wanting to build towards production quality, look at a state management and like a repository pattern, something like RiverPod. One of my favorites is Block for Flutter. There's a number of them out there, but really this is tightly coupled, but it does help illustrate the way this works. So with this out there and deployed, we should be able to redeploy our app here. And we'll do a hot restart. And might have to actually kill it. All right, we're going to do a fresh restart of the app here. It needs to include and rebuild in the Amplify SDK. Interesting enough, while that's doing that, one of the ways they were able to get to having the Flutter Amplify SDK rolled out so quickly was that they're actually under the covers using the iOS and the Android SDKs that they had already produced the year before. And so instead of rewriting those, they just created symbolic method channels in the Flutter framework so that they could have Dart interfaces for those iOS and Android libraries. And right now, wait for that to get up here. I'll be able to get us to this. What's the challenge with a live demo? Do I have the app running? Nope. Oh boy. Now, we are going to give this a kill and give this a fresh start and see how it does. Worst comes to worst, we'll do a clean here. Still running. There we go. All right, then. Thank you for your patience. And now we actually can see our to-dos. Of course, they're not interactive, but this is our to-dos coming back from GraphQL, and you can actually see the log output here coming from the back end. If I do a refresh there, you can get a new fresh set of data coming in. So since we are a little tight on time, I'm going to jump straight ahead to just adding the rest of our CRUD functionality. So we'll have the ability to add, change state, and delete to-dos here. I'm just going to jump ahead on that, and hopefully the refresh will be a little faster this time. There we go. So now we've similarly just taken from our example here of using the list query. We're now using the various mutation queries that were generated. So for this one, adding a whole new to-do item. For this one, being able to update the completed state on a to-do item. And for this one, just calling the delete mutation with the ID of the to-do item. And we'll give that a reload. Now, if we come back here, we can actually see that. And do we send that? There we go. And we can even change state on one of those. And if we hop back over here to our AWS console and take a look in DynamoDB, there is all of our data and its updated state. So that, 4 minutes to spare, y'all. That is basically front to back the demo itself. I'm going to hop back over here. Where is my presentation view? There it is. I'm going to head back over to my presentation here because I do want to talk about a couple of items here about what's be a little critical of this. What rocks about this framework right now is the tightly integrated command line tooling. I was just touching the surface of it. It really allows you to create a lot of customization of your stack, or as we did here, just easily just get a basic scaffolding out and deployed. One of the things that's kind of missing in other Amplify tooling, there is the ability to do code generation. So you can generate your own models based on the GraphQL schema instead of doing the brute force marshaling and unmarshaling that I was doing there. The seamless integration with AWS is awesome. Anybody who's ever fought with a CloudFormation template or gone and used Terraform or Bato or any of the other tools for doing automated infrastructure management, being able to do it that smoothly and quickly and have it just auto-generate for you is really great. That being said, there's a learning curve. If you want to do anything more than what the bare functionality is that Amplify provides, you still have to be well-versed in AWS, and you still have to know how to use the underlying services that Amplify leverages. This just gives you a very fast on-ramp to be able to get going. It's awesome that it's an extensible framework. There's a lot of folks in the open source community providing additional plugins and infrastructure patterns for it. And the Amplify team at AWS themselves do a great job of keeping all of the tooling and the SDKs up to date. And they're quite responsive both in their fora and on GitHub. That being said, it is just getting out of its beta state. It went gold back in March. So we've only had about 6 months of it. And even over that time, they've added new features like pinpoint analytics, being able to stream your GraphQL interfaces. So you're not just doing transactional queries, but you can subscribe to object and type event changes. So there's a lot being built there, and it's a strong contender for the fast on-ramp frameworks like Firebase, which it's always being compared to. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I've got code here and links, and like I said, I'll add that to Slack. And of course, we're at the summit, but I've got to plug DevCommunity. It's a great group of folks, and we have awesome meetups, and it would be great to see all of you come and join us in the future too. So with that, I'm gonna hop out of here, and I know we're tight. Are there any questions that folks want to want to throw my way while I get out of sharing here? Oh, Shannon, if you want, you can unmute everybody.
Yeah, I just enabled that. So
thank you. And we can stop. Did you stop recording?
I have not stopped recording. I didn't know if we wanted to
okay, well, we can,
yeah, we can on for others to learn from, or if we
I gotta just look. Just looking through here. Do we have any questions? I'm just looking. Any questions or explanations anyone would like? Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate it. Cool. Well, I'll be over and available in the Slack, of course. I hope you all enjoyed it, and feel free to reach out.